السلام عليكم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. I want to welcome all of you today. Thank you for coming out. I know it's raining. I know there's a lot of traffic. Jazakallah khair for supporting this effort. I was sitting here during the presentation listening to what the MLFA does, and I was blown away because the reality is that the United States is decades ahead of a lot of other countries in terms of I was sitting next to my husband who's British, and he's like, we don't have this. We need something like this in the UK. And this is a blessing that we have here in the US. And this is something that we have to support. Because the reality is that there is a witch hunt. And you guys know this. We know that there is injustice happening. And if we allow that injustice to happen, it will only grow. The thing that I love about what this organization is doing is that they're setting precedents. So we are sending a message that it's not okay to do these things to Muslims. One of the biggest problems that we're facing is that there's started to become, in every period of time, there's like a type of discrimination and bigotry that becomes acceptable. And there's a kind that's unacceptable. And the problem is that, yes, we've gone through times where it was acceptable to discriminate against African Americans. It was acceptable. It was something that it was normal. There was a time when it was acceptable to discriminate against Japanese Americans. And so what we've seen is that throughout time, we unfortunately as a nation and even, as a people, as a race, we have, unfortunately, despite how much how progressive we've become and how much we've grown, and, there's technology and there's all these developments. But unfortunately, there's still that acceptable bigotry, and now it's against Muslims. It's okay, and not only, and I will go even further to say that it's not just okay to be biased against Muslims, but in some cases, it'll win you elections. In some cases, it will not only is it acceptable, but it's actually it's political capital. It'll actually gain you support and will even win you elections. And when you really want to get a candidate, right, and you really want to make a candidate lose their place in an election, what do? You call him a Muslim, right? What were they saying about Obama, right? The point here is that this has become the acceptable bullseye that people have actually, it's something that people are okay with. And so this type of work, I cannot say how important it is. I know that not everyone raised their hand, and some people, they want to give in secret. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward those who give publicly and those who give in secret, because Allah actually mentions both of them in the Quran, that there are some who give secretly and then those who give publicly and secretly. Both are rewarded. Yeah, and we just have to set our intention for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But those who want to give in secret, I urge you to please give something before you leave. I just urge you to give something, even if it's less than what he was asking, but give something and make your intention for what I'm about to talk about. SubhanAllah, the thing that I've learned about service, the thing that I've learned about giving to others, is that in fact, when we give to others, we are ultimately and first off giving to ourselves. And that's amazing, because so often, may Allah bless him, the brother was talking about how much we can help other people, right? And that was the push, is that the focus was on how I can help someone else. And oftentimes when people are asking you to give, you're at a fundraiser, or they're trying to appeal for a certain cause, the focus is telling you, here's how you can help another person, which is all true. That's all true. But I'm actually going to come at it from a different angle, and I'm going to say, this is how you're going to help yourself. And why am I doing that? Because as human beings, we are self-interested. And that's not because we're bad people, but that's just the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us, that ultimately we are motivated by self-interest, and we are motivated by self-preservation. At the end of the day, that's how we're designed. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He wants us to do things, He gives us rewards. right? He gives us Jannah. He tells us, do these things, you'll get this reward. Because that's how human beings are. We do look out for our own self-interest. That doesn't mean that we're selfish, necessarily. There's a difference between being self-interested and human and being selfish. Because a selfish person only looks out for their self-interest and doesn't care about other people's interests. A selfish person wants their self-interest by any means necessary. That's an awful quality, yeah? But to be self-interested is to be human. That we look for what's going to give us good things. That's going to help us. That's going to give us happiness. That's going to protect us. That's going to protect our families. This is just a normal human motivation. All right, everybody with me? Now, that isn't to say we don't care about others. But that's one of our strongest motivators. So what I'm going to do is actually tell you that when you give to causes like this, anytime you give to another person, you are first off giving to yourself. And I'll tell you why. I'm just going to talk about it from two different perspectives. One is just the secular psychological perspective. What the research shows in psychology about service. Now, one thing that was very interesting is they did a study, and they made 4 groups of people, and they took these people, and what they did was they divided them into 4 groups. Okay, each group was told to do different things, and one was told to do random acts of kindness. Another was told to treat themselves. So we have one group who's being told to help another person. Another group is told to treat themselves. A third group is told to do something that will help the world. So it's kind of like a global impact. And then the fourth was a control group. They were just supposed to keep track of their activities for that week. Now, the results were striking of this study. Only the participants who engaged in pro-social behaviors. Now, what are pro-social behaviors? Those were the 2 groups who helped others, either on a one-to-one basis, on an individual, or a global basis, or a global impact. Only those 2 groups demonstrated improvements in psychological flourishing. What does that mean? They were shown to have increase in their own positive emotions. And this actually increased from one week to another. What is this talking about? What this is talking about is this, that when you take people, and a lot of times if you ask a person, what's going to make you happy? Actually, they've done studies where they ask groups of people. They did one study where they asked millennials. Most people in this room are millennials, okay? Millennials are y'all who are around teenage to 20s, yeah? They asked millennials, what's your number one goal? What's your number one goal? More than 80% of millennials said to make money. Fair enough, okay? More than 50% said to be famous. Okay, so what's happening here is that the vast majority of people believe that what's going to make them happy, because ultimately what are we looking for in life? We're looking for happiness. We're looking for well-being. That's what motivates human beings. So the vast majority of people believe that happiness actually is in money and fame. That these are the things that are going to bring us happiness. But what's very striking is that when they study happiness, when they actually look at the reality of happiness and the reality of well-being, they find that it has nothing to do with wealth and it has nothing to do with fame. There's something else that's related to happiness. And that's what I'm going to talk about. What is that? So researchers say that about 40% of our happiness is inherited. Okay? It's sort of like it has to do with your genes, etc. So about 40% in there. And about 10% is having to do with like safety, food, that you're okay. But that leaves 50%, which is sort of controlled by us, by our behaviors, by our thinking. Fair enough? Now, what are the things they found that increase happiness in that 50% that we have control over, essentially, yeah, more or less? One of the most decisive factors that they found again and again in increasing happiness is helping other people. It's pro-social behaviors. It's helping a person in need. It's volunteering. It's giving to another person. And the reason this is so powerful is because we often think that what's going to make me happy is taking care of me, right? We think that, so for example, we had a group in that study where they were actually told to treat themselves, meaning go spend money on yourself, take yourself out, you know what I mean, go to the spa, whatever it is that you want to do to treat yourself. They did not show an increase in happiness. They did not actually show an increase in positive emotion. Isn't that amazing? Even though we believe that these are the things that are going to make us happy. Having more stuff is going to make us happy, right? Or treating myself is going to make me more happy. But in fact, that's not what the research shows. It doesn't make people happier. But what does make people happier is helping another person. That's powerful. Because what it shows us is that Allah, the designer, right, has wired us in such a way that will motivate us to do what? What did I say at the beginning? What are we motivated to do? To seek what? Self-interest, happiness. This is something everybody wants. Christian, Jewish, Muslim, atheist, agnostic. Everybody wants to be happy, right? Allah has designed us to actually feel happiness when we give to others. This is the design of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's how Allah, Al-Latif, is wiring us to be what? Pro-social creatures. People who are thinking of others. Because ultimately, it actually makes me happier. And you know how they tell you that money doesn't buy happiness, right? Do you know they lied to you? Money actually does buy happiness, and studies show that money buys happiness. But wait a minute, right? Money only buys happiness when spent on others. Isn't that powerful? That's what the studies have shown. That when you have money and you spend it on yourself, it doesn't increase your happiness. Your actual well-being, your positive. Yes, you might have you might feel good for a moment, but it's not, it's fleeting. Yeah? And it hasn't been shown to increase in significant positive emotion. But spending that money on others does. And it's so powerful that even just remembering a time, they found this in studies, just remembering a time that you spent on others will increase your happiness. Can you believe that? So the reality is money buys happiness, but only when spent on others. Subhanallah. Again, this is the design of Allah. What's Allah pushing us to do? Do you understand? What else? Now, what does Allah and His Messenger say about this? So I've talked to you just about secular psychology so far. This is something that an atheist will be motivated to do. An agnostic will be motivated to do simply because it's going to be it's going to benefit themselves. It's going to make them feel good right now. And this reward of happiness that comes with helping other people actually comes in this life even before the next. So it's a reward, an intrinsic reward that God has put even in this life, even for a disbeliever. That's just in the design of being human, is that you're going to feel good